How do I? Oh, hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Pro Democracy Podcast. We are very excited because we have two of our favorite fellow podcasters on Craig Hardula,
Jardula. So
Jardula,
yeah.
and Fiorella Isabell from the Convo Couch. These guys have been freaking killing it lately with their coverage of Latin America and, of course, other things as well. I've been following you guys for maybe like 2 years now, something like that. And you guys are just like, you're always on point. You got your fingers on the pulse. I like your takes. Spicy, but we were just talking about spicy food, so I have spicy in my head. But you guys have been this past month in Peru, in Nicaragua, and in Honduras, and you just came back from Honduras, which is going to be the topic of today. But I'd like to touch on those other countries too. We did just do an episode on Nicaragua, so maybe not spend too long on that, but I'd love to hear more about overall impressions of the region later on. Go ahead, Fee. You have something?
No. I was just gonna say, Nicaragua is to me the most revolutionary leftist country in Central America. The Sandinistas do not hold back against their disdain for the Western Empire, particularly the Yankee United States. I love that about them. As you said, I am spicy. And I absolutely love that they're not going to play ball with the United States. They kicked the OAS out, and I think that's the right method to take. The United States will never cooperate with any of these socialist countries, even if they're going to pretend that that's the case. So I just wanted to say that right off the bat. That was my impression of Nicaragua. I absolutely love the people of Nicaragua. I love the government. I think they're very organized and very aware of the things that need to get done. And they're very self-sufficient. And I really love that about them.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting you say that they don't cooperate with the United States. And even the New York Times, I was reading the New York Times piece about Honduras. For those of you who aren't super familiar with the topic or the country, they just elected a leftist president, the first woman president of the country ever. And we're going to be talking a lot about that and getting in depth. But one thing the New York Times even stated was that there was a lot of concern that the United States just wouldn't cooperate them with their kind of socialist posturing and the policies that they want to implement. I mean, they just said it outright that the United States, might not cooperate with them, which would be to be expected. I mean, when Manuel Zelaya, the president, he was I think he was like less left wing than his wife, who is now president. When he was couped in 2009 in a U.S. backed military coup that flew him to Soto Cano, the military U.S. military base in the country, and then to Costa Rica, I think it was, which is a U.S. ally. That happened while he was in the process of getting in on Venezuela's under Hugo Chavez's Petro-Carib alliance, which offers oil at cheap rates for developing nations. And he was moving into that sphere of influence of Chavez. So that's when all that happened. And I'd like to start off today just because back in 2019, I wrote an article about Honduras that kind of tried to give an overview of the country's descent. Because after Manuel Zelaya, the former president who was ousted, he brought in some modest reforms, things like a minimum wage, which the country didn't have. He was starting to do land reform. And so the U.S. got pissed off. They took him out. They helped take him out. And since then, the country's just like been in free fall into like just this neoliberal hellscape. Like we say that in the US, but we don't know what that means. I mean, for the people, just to give a quick example, that's not in my article, but when I went to Honduras, I had a translator, and 6 months prior, young girl, 6 months prior, she had been kidnapped, and like that's not uncommon there. Like just because you're a young woman, you can get kidnapped. They have a law against two men riding a motorcycle at the same time because one stays on the motorcycle and then the other one gets off, grabs a young woman, and they take off together. So it was like a method. They had to introduce a law against that. So that just gives you an idea of like how awful it is. I called it in a couple paragraphs I wrote on Substack recently, narcocracy, right? Like a government of narcos, which the U.S. has supported. So, I mean, Honduras, as I wrote in 2019, has the highest poverty rate in the continental Americans, 65.7% by the last available official government count in 2016, with a staggering 42.5% of the entire population classified as living in extreme poverty. So nearly half the population is in extreme poverty. Corruption has gone hand in hand with austerity measures and are now simply described as Honduras's operating system. I mean, things like the IMF offering them millions of dollars, but to take it, they have to lay off all their public sector workers. They have to privatize the energy sector. They have to privatize healthcare. Juan Orlando Hernandez, so after the 2009 coup, a guy from the National Party was made interim president, and and then another National Party figure was elected, and this guy. Porfirio Lobo, I think his name was. I could be getting that wrong. He's connected to drug trafficking. After him came Juan Orlando Hernandez, who won in 2013. Whose brother Tony Hernandez is in prison in Miami now for drug trafficking. Juan Orlando took drug trafficking money and used it as campaign funds. He stole the election again in 2017. He wasn't even supposed to run for president because in Honduras you only get one term. In 2017, he ran again anyways. They stole that election. Even The Economist, which Vladimir Lenin described as the mouthpiece of the bourgeoisie, was like openly acknowledging that this fraud was like happening. The United States knew it. The United States supported him in 2017 despite the fraud and despite the fact that he was under investigation as a co-conspirator in his brother's drug trafficking case. Juan Orlando not only took drug trafficking money from for his campaign, but also for his campaign, he stole public healthcare money. So just social spending, austerity, social spending cut, austerity ramped up. At the same time, corruption ramps up, and basically, legal reforms that allow for impunity or close to impunity for drug crimes, and at the same time further criminalize things like abortion, things like political protest. There were a number of political prisoners there that protested against the coup and the electoral fraud. So this is the context that we're coming out of now with the election of Xiomara Castro Zelaya, the wife of Manuel Zelaya, who in my view has more left principles than her husband, and in my view is a lot more popular. So you guys have been in that context and witnessing firsthand, and I'm very jealous, witnessing firsthand the jubilation of the people as they're finally able to like overturn this U.S.-backed narco dictatorship. So what was that like for you guys?
It's so crazy. You're saying all these things, and they just hit so much, at home. Because being there and witnessing, when you're talking about the social pro, Darren, we actually met a vice mayor, the ex-vice mayor of San Francisco or the Berkeley area, who had built hospitals there that were shut down when Juan Orlando Hernandez took over. So to meet these people actually doing these things you're talking about, and basically everything you laid out, for people to understand where Honduras is, they have to understand what happened in Honduras before, how it was the CIA's toilet bowl is what I call it. When the Sandinistas ran out the Contras. A lot of them were relocated into Honduras. And it's always been a traffic, a narcotic traffic. I almost said it like some of the Hondurans that said, we're tired of this narcotrafica government that's here. So witnessing all this with our own eyes and going and talking to the people of Honduras and then getting to experience what's going to happen. Now, I don't know if Zamora is more left than Manuel Zelaya, but I think that was something that was a shock to us. When me and Fam were in Nicaragua, you had this revolutionary Yankee go home attitude. We're not playing, kick the OAS out, whatnot. And then when you start talking to people in Honduras, you realize that it's a democratic socialism type of government that's coming. It's actually a capitalist, sort of capitalist government.
Hybrid economy. Yeah,
it's a hybrid economy. And, once again, they're going to be walking on eggshells because, as we know, like you stated out, and this is your wheelhouse, you've done so much great work in this area, Alex.
No, thank you, sir.
In 2009, you're welcome, brother. In 2009, they removed Manuel Zelaya in the middle of the night, with his pajamas on. And that's the clip. I asked him, I said, well, what's going to happen if Zamora Castro and the Libre Party can maintain power, can get power? How will they be able to maintain it? What's to say the United States doesn't come in and remove her in the middle of the night? So seeing stuff like these tweets from Anthony Blinken come out and whatnot, and kind of understanding the government, like we said, it's a little bit of a kind of quasi-capitalist government. Yes, it has this, economic leftist mentality. But, when I asked one of the representatives of the Libre Party, and I said, so what are you going to nationalize first? What are you going to take into your own hands so you can build more schools, more bridges, more roads? And they said, we're not going to really concentrate on nationalizing anything right away. We're just going to actually open up competition, and it caught me off guard because I was like, well, that seems like, capitalism of sorts. But understanding where they are and how they got there and how it is the murder capital of the world, they do have to walk lightly. And we don't know if this is a Godfather situation where you keep your friends close, but your enemies closer, or they're just going to let things ride and try to figure out what's what and hope that the U.S. doesn't come in and coup them again.
Yeah.
Right. I just wanted to add a little bit of context to that. I also asked Manuel Zelaya a question about, because he said that he thought the relationship with the United States had changed. He seemed a little bit more partial to the Biden administration than to the Trump administration, which we were like, the Obama administration and Joe Biden were highly influential in your, they were part of the whole US-backed coup. So I asked him why he thought the relationship had changed. And he said, well, so far, they haven't done anything after that, this far, they haven't done anything. And let's remind everybody that the Libre Party came about as a creation after the 2009 coup. In 2011 was when the Libre Party was established. And so he feels like the relationship has changed. However, I do feel like they do have people in there that are monitoring the situation based on a lot of our talks with the Libre Party members and the youth, who a lot of them are far to the left of the current government. Xiomara is, running on a platform of democratic socialism. They have songs about it, El Socialismo Democrático. They talk about it all the time. So yeah, it is definitely not like the same thing as what's in Venezuela, Cuba, or Nicaragua. However, I agree with Pasta that you have to understand where the context that they were coming from. They didn't look at this election as a political election. They looked at this election as an attempt to absolutely ally themselves with everybody that they could against the current totalitarian drug trafficking regime that they deem is a dictatorship. This is what they called it. And so that's why they were able to really surpass with 69% of a turnout, nearly 70% of a turnout, because they allied themselves with the Liberal Party and other people on the center left and center right who may not be partial to their more socialist tendencies, but who wanted to get rid of the current government. So that's what this election was about for them. It was like, that's it. That's what we're fighting for. And then everything else we'll figure out along the way. And so I'm a little bit hesitant. Not that I'm pessimistic, because I don't want to tell the people of Honduras how to govern. That was never our intention. We were there to monitor the elections, and the elections, although chaotic, were still more transparent than ours. But at the same time, I was telling them, make sure to keep an eye on them, because for Anthony Blinken is one of the most nefarious warmongers. He's a sneaky warmonger, and he's the fact that they're doing this is that they can, for me, that they think that Honduras is going to play ball, and they don't see them as a threat. So this is kind of like the moment they don't play ball, what is going to change diplomatically. But for now, Manuel Zelaya reiterated on the second meeting with him that he's going to that they're looking to build coalitions with everybody, including countries in Central America, specifically Central America, to strengthen that bond.
Yeah, I mean, just to put it in, I want to share an image with people, but you know, again, this was the Obama Biden coup, right? In 2009, and this is Joe Biden with Juan Orlando.
Yeah,
one of my favorite pictures, just because it shows. I mean, this is a guy who's again a drug trafficker.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's I also want to say about, you know, about Manuel Zelaya and Xiomara that, you know, I think that they are friendly towards socialism. You know, they're treading a very fine line right now, and they have to be very careful. When I interviewed Xiomara in 2019, she spoke very highly of the defense of the Venezuelan embassy, because I had just been defending the embassy with 20 or so people inside the United States. And so, and by extension of the Venezuelan government, they're also, you know, she's also talked a lot about opening up trade with China. I mean, to put it in comparison, when Trump called on other countries to move the Israeli embassy, to move their embassies from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, Honduras was like the first country that actually did that following the United States. So you have this huge transition of a foreign policy, a huge transition of a you know, domestic economic policy, but they're treading a very fine line. I remember when I was in Tegucigalpa, I went through I spent like 3 hours in the main square there, just walking around, and I'd walk up to random people and I just ask them, "What do you think of Juan Orlando?" And I'm not kidding, 80% of people were afraid to talk. They were just too afraid to say anything negative because of the violence and impunity that's gone on in that country. And I think that it's a similar situation with the new government, where, you know, they have to be careful what they say about the United States. They can't just, you know, come up to the plate and start hitting home runs, you know. It's too dangerous because the United States will back another military coup. They're not afraid to do that. And you know, I think the thing you said, Craig, about them looking to open up competition, it's actually kind of funny, because I do think that will help their economy, because there's no competition in that country. There's only handouts to like the 12 oligarch families who own everything in that country. So yeah, I mean, ironically enough, I think capitalism would be an improvement for them over that kind of you know, oligarch, total control by the oligarchy that they've had.
Well, I also don't think that like capitalism is, or I don't think that like having competition is necessarily like capitalist, right? Like capitalism pertains to ownership. And so I don't think it's necessarily incompatible at all. And if that's like what they need to do to develop themselves, then that's totally fine.
I would also suggest that if they're looking to nationalize any industries, kick the fucking Canadian mining companies out.
I'll work on that.
Make a phone call, Mila. Get on the horn and stuff. Yeah, listen, competition is good right now. You know, and I'm one of those guys who I always say a mixed economy is very important. You know, there's something good about everything. There's something bad about every single ism out there, whatnot. But, you know, I think in certain situations that, you know, it's necessary for a country this poor to make sure that they have the bottom line floor where people can have housing, education, healthcare, that they have some nationalized companies with, you know, structure within their government. From what I understand is that a lot of the beef companies in Nicaragua are, have a lot of entities within the government that are exported out, or when it comes to their infrastructure. So finding a good balance is one thing, because I know obviously you want to open up competition to a lot of things, but I wouldn't hold it against the country to nationalize something to make sure that they can pull their country up from the bottom so that they can get those things that they need. So even though opening up competition might be a good thing, and I'm sure all the capitalists will be happy about that they're not nationalizing things, I think that Honduras is being as poor as they are. They got to make sure they can do what Nicaragua can do, and that's feed themselves. And that might require nationalizing certain entities of their economy. So, I would assume that they would have a plan in something in that nature. It's funny, I didn't know this, but Honduras, of all the Central American countries, has more empty land than any of these countries that they have the opportunity to do something with. Now, I think personally they should invest in hemp, make hemp toilet paper, sell it all around the world. You know what I'm saying? But obviously religion plays a big part when it comes to Central and South American countries. But, they have an opportunity to do something as a country to really help out their economy, help out their infrastructure, help out their people. So, I mean, I'd like to see some form of a balance there.
Yeah. So, I mean, what kind of stories did you hear? Were you guys hearing from people about their experience in this post-coup environment?
Yeah. So actually, in not dire poverty, but general poverty, 73% of the population in Honduras is living in that poverty. And so even when you talk to people in the streets, they would say, "I'm not a huge fan of Zelaya or even Xiomara," but the people who weren't fans of them, but they're like, "We hate this government. We want to get them out." So they were extremely motivated to vote, which is why the turnout was so high, because people were like, I don't necessarily agree with everything this government does. And people are going to try to compare that to, oh well, it was like getting rid of Donald Trump. Oh no. This was an actual totalitarian, drug trafficking, fascistic regime that people could not live. They were under an entire dictatorship suppression. That's how they felt, and that's how they described it. So to them, it was like 12 years of fighting, 12 years of doing this. And this was the moment where, in spite of the adversity, right, of having, the fear of the US empire interfering, of having the fear of the totalitarian government cheating, which they did attempt to cheat. And we documented that, as did other journalists on the ground. But in spite of all of that, the turnout was so vast, and the desire to get rid of these people was so vast, and the involvement of the citizens in their government, in their elections, because they knew about the rules, they were so involved. And of course the Libre Party taking the leadership to really kind of pick up where there was in 2017. It was very fraudulent, and they kind of tried to fix those mistakes and learn from that. Because of that experience, they were able to overcome a lot of the adversity. And it was very moving, and very, after being in Central America and seeing how the left there is, and seeing how effective they are, just being in America and looking at our left, it's just like, I'm just so done with it.
Yeah, I think that's
we've talked about that a lot on here as well, and I think what I've observed from the left in Latin America and elsewhere is that they seem to be actually focused on material issues, whereas I don't really think the left here, it's more of a culture war, and so it's more of an aesthetic war than an actually political fight. So
that's the thing too, like leaving Peru, going to getting on our way to Honduras. That's when I discovered you, Mila, because you had this article, just trying to figure out, as Farm was getting her Twitter taken down and getting censored, and seeing all these people with their attacks and what they're all about, the American.
Oh
no, I was
I love
interested to see
where he's going. Frozen though. Yeah.
Is it there now?
We lost you.
Oh, it's his connection, I think. We keep losing him. Pasta. Yeah. Careful with your connection. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm here. Okay. Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you were talking about Fee getting suspended and the response of the American left. He's gone again.
Oh no.
Christmas, what's going on? Janine, is anybody on the internet?
But yeah, no, the response, well, he gets that fixed. The response was, a lot of like, oh, it was probably because she said some anti-vaxxer shit or something. Like it was like, and I hadn't even posted about anything related to COVID at all in like months.
Yeah.
I'm anti-mandate, which is, I guess you're not allowed to be anti-mandate on the left, but I am, and so it was like this whole like focus on oh she once said this thing and that thing, and it's like you're absolutely right. It's a culture war. It is very symbolic, superficial. There's no depth to it. They in Latin America people focus on economics, and I think it's because they have to. They don't have a choice. People don't have running water. They don't have electricity. They're living under oppression. In North America, particularly, Canada, the United States, we're distracted, right? We're a very distracted population, and so we have time to completely ignore material conditions. And for a lot of these people who call themselves communists and socialists, they're not paying attention to the material conditions that are literally happening before them. So yeah.
And I was saying.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying because I was so like intrigued by seeing how many people were attacking Fiorella, and coming from Nicaragua, and both in Nicaragua and Honduras, you hear that same chant: "The people united will never be defeated." Sam, could you say it in Spanish so I don't embarrass myself real quick?
El pueblo unido jamás será vencido.
Right, and that they have that sense of community, and you see these people there that are like, they have that community. They're together. They have no choices. And really to describe what we saw as far as like, the experiences from people, Alex, to answer that question you had, it's almost like a jailbreak when you're waiting for the right time. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, now the coast is clear. And we really saw that out with the counting process, the tabulation process, as they were calling people out and they were going, Libre Party, and all the people are, yeah. So you could see so many people who were so quiet probably for so long get to express what they really felt inside. You know what I'm saying? And just scream it out. Yeah. And they were just, you can see this happen. The passion, the beautiness of it. It was something special. I mean, it was a piece of me that was dying inside being an election integrity activist in America, where we have proprietary software from tabulation machines counting our elections. And I wish we had that. But you can see the people really just coming out like this was their time. This was their moment. They were getting rid of this oppressive fascist government. And now it was just happening right before our very own eyes.
Yeah. I mean, we talk so much trash about human rights and corruption on this show, but Honduras is a country where those are like real issues. And it's so amazing to compare how the United States government treats Nicaragua versus Honduras when they're neighbors, and everything that it accuses the Nicaraguan government of, it's like times 10 in Honduras, but real.
And you don't hear about Honduras very often.
No.
Like, it's not in the media. It's not even really a subject among the American left or the Canadian left at all. It's very under the radar.
Yeah, but it's fun, like Trump and Juan Orlando, because I'm just thinking like, okay, Juan Orlando is a guy who sold placebos to the National Healthcare Service at inflated prices and pocketed the money for his campaign. Trump's biggest corruption scandal was he took a soccer ball from Vladimir Putin and gave it to his son. It's like total night and day. And like the worst dictator in the hemisphere, again, supported by Biden and Obama. Trump didn't do anything like that. He didn't do any coups like the U.S. did in Honduras.
But he did support the elections, right? And the 2017 elections. And
that's right.
To the Libre Party, right?
Yeah.
His State Department did. The OAS, the freaking OAS, said those elections were fraudulent.
I know.
Yet they still support them. And the funny thing is, when you talk to the Libre Party, is, well, what were the issues? And that's why they introduced the new biometric system. They had to get it pushed. They're like, well, dead people were voting. People who were ineligible were voting. They were able to stuff the ballot box. And when the lights went down and when they came back up, that 5 percentage point lead that the Libre Party had was gone. Well, what happened in 2020 to Trump? It was like Trump was complaining about the same things that happened to him. Well, you supported it in Honduras, so I guess karma's a bitch, huh, Donald?
All right, this is getting too spicy for Twitter Live, so I'm going to
sorry,
end the stream.
My bad.
And we're going to move over
Awesome.
exclusively to Rockfin. I hope that you guys join us there. There's more to come.
Sorry about that.
No, that's really funny. It actually
He does
reminded
this all
me
the time.
It reminded me like with Middle East news after Trump, because I mostly like that's kind of more my area, but I like when Trump was first elected, there was actually some excitement because they were like, oh, okay, it's cool, it's good now that like it's out in the open, like because Obama used to like congratulate us on the Eid and then like bomb our people, but now like Trump's very open about it. But then when Trump lost, they were like, well, this is punishment for what he did to Soleimani. So karma is
God curse.
Yeah. Yeah, or that too.
I like the fact that Trump's thing was he didn't start any new wars. He didn't bomb Iran. Yeah, but he gave a crap of money. He gave a ton of money to Israel and weapons to Israel and the Saudis and stuff. The bar is so low when it comes to foreign policy in this country. It's ridiculous.
It really is. Yeah.
And Trump gets credit for, starting the end of the war in Afghanistan, right? But if you look at the numbers that are released by the Air Force every month, or were released by the Air Force every month, they just like bombed the shit out of that country until their goal, like their policy was, we're gonna bomb them to the negotiating table, and that's what they did. I mean, if the numbers of bombs just skyrocketed under Trump compared to even Obama, who is the droner in chief. But let's go back a little bit and to Honduras. I'm sorry, Mila. We were talking about what we wanted to do this week, and I'm like, I think we have to do Latin America again, which is like we're like always covering Latin America on the show, and I want to branch out. But Mila's like, well, there's a lot of imperialism there, so
yeah, it's true. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's just that's the fact of it's the nature of the beast. So.
But I think in keeping with the theme of our show, it's worth pointing out that prior to the 2009 coup, the United States was pumping millions of dollars through the National Endowment for Democracy and USAID into these pro-democracy groups. So that's where we get the title of today's episode, narco dictators for democracy or whatever we called it. But I mean, so did you guys meet anybody who was like supportive of the National Party?
No.
On the ground, during election day, obviously we saw some people, we saw party members in the room, whatnot. We talked to a few
trying to slip things in the ballot box.
Well, I mean, there was a situation. Wyatt Reed from Sputnik and Press TV caught this awesome moment where a National Party member was trying to block the entrance into allowing the people vote, saying it was closed, and people were screaming and whatnot and yelling and stuff. And Wyatt's great. He speaks Spanish too as well. He yelled to the National Police. Now you got this white guy standing above there going, "Hey man, aren't you guys going to intervene and let them come on in there, whatnot?" And eventually the police moved them aside, and they all came in there, whatnot. So we saw a lot of that, whatnot. But our experience too was with a lot of Libre Party. But like Fiorella said, even people out there, that were part of the that were once maybe National Party members, they were done. They were tired. They're like, we're just tired of this government right now. They weren't even crazy, some of them, about Xiomara, but they were like, we are done. So it was hard to find any national people out and about. That's how starving that country was, and we're just done of this government.
Yeah, I mean, the National Party is highly unpopular. Like, I mean, there's just no, like, it's just extremely unpopular. And in spite of, like, a couple things I want to point out, in spite of, the illegalities that happened and that the observers watched, which is like the fact that they Some of them were allowing cell phones in, which was a violation from the Centro Nacional Electoral. They were allowing the advertisements and propaganda vehicles coming in to the voting centers, which was a violation. There were diputados, or like people of politicians in there trying to convince people to vote for the National Party when that's illegal. And of course, like what Pasta just described, that Wyatt caught, as well as just like the suppression by late opening of centers, closing of centers, attempting to, you know, keep the doors closed where they shouldn't have. All of these tactics, like Pasta calls it death by 1,000 little swords. It didn't happen. And in North America, in the United States, that can happen because the turnout, people aren't motivated to go to vote at all. So like even if they are a little bit, our turnout's still like in the 40% range. But in
see, the CIA is zapping us at the right time, right? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many, and just having so many of the people who are so motivated there.
Oh boy.
So should I take off where she left off? You know,
well, that's what she did for you.
You lost your feet for a little bit, but it was funny
Good.
too as well, is because if you look at the numbers, right, you'll see that Xiomara got over like close to 55% of the votes, and a lot of people will say, well, there should be support from the National Party. The top of the ticket did get 30% of the vote, and they did win some seats and whatnot. But all the little tactics that take place, the reason why you're not allowed to bring your cell phone into a polling place is because there's a lot of bribery of votes. In other words, it's a poor country. Everybody's starving. 73% of the people live in poverty line. So when you go and you vote for the National Party and you made a deal, you take a picture with your phone, you come out, and you can show your National Party member guy, hey, I voted for you guys, give me my money. They also had food there at, sandwiches and whatnot. I made a joke because I thought it was so ridiculous that, the whole system, and one of the things that really sucks about the Honduras system is that you don't go to a general table and they say, go to this area to vote, like in Nicaragua. There's usually a general table, you show your ID, and they tell you which one to go vote for. You go to your party's tent, and they write a little receipt and tell you where to go so you know. Other than that, you can look up at the CNE website, but it was down. Wink, wink. All of a sudden, it was down after they moved polling places. These were the tactics that the National Party, which was using and stuff, but they had food at these tents. Now, it might not seem like that it's that big of a deal, but for starving people in the country, you bring up your whole family that can vote that day and you can get some food and a couple bucks. It's great. I made the joke. I said, if the National Party gives me 3 pupusas, 2 sandwiches, and a 6-pack of Imperial beer, I will vote for them, right? I mean, that was a joke I made, but it was like I was trying to get this point across that they were using all these tactics to try to suppress the Libre Party's vote, try to enhance their vote. So that 30% that they got at the top of the ticket, I wouldn't believe that, guys, at all. I think it might have been more like 10, 15%, if that, because when they were doing the tabulations, it was just a cheer for the Libre Party. 1 vote, Libre Party, yay! 1 part, National Party, boo! It was like, that's what we saw. We didn't see much of that support. So looking for people who kind of support, the National Party, you wouldn't find it. And like we said, even people who were not crazy about the Libre Party were still willing to go vote for them because they were just done and tired of this government.
Yeah, it's the magic of coalition building. I remember I've seen so many reports because Hondurans have really tried to get rid of Juan Orlando for a long time. This is not a new struggle. Ever since the coup, there's been massive demonstrations, general strikes against the National Party. And when things really heat up, when like the streets of Tegucigalpa are flooded with people, what does the National Party do? They bus people in and give them limpiras on the bus to go protest for peace or whatever, So all of the tactics at their disposal, they use total corruption, straight up theft, and the United States is just they turn away, and pretend they don't see anything. It's when I went to Honduras, I was just so emotional because it really hits you what these people have been going through because of our government. And there's just nothing like it I mean, there's very little like it elsewhere. I mean, it's one of the worst cases of imperialism I've ever seen. Certainly the worst I've ever witnessed firsthand. And there's the left media doesn't care. Like they just don't care. I think
they're not left though. That's the thing. We've heard that in Nicaragua. We heard that in Honduras. They're not left. They say this. There is no left in America.
Yeah. I mean, the one good journalist at The Intercept, Li Fong, is like the only one I've ever seen actually report on Honduras. You know, occasionally you'll get an article in The Nation or Jacobin every 4 or 5 years or something. But like there's been no real scrutiny on this, despite it all being so blatant and documented. So I mean, I'm so grateful for you guys that you're on top of this.
There was also one point. It's crazy. You want to talk about the extra resources? Fam was talking about these little cars, like those little cars you saw them, the little they're like the motorcycles with the little thing of 3-wheeler motorcycles. And you can't there's no parking lots to go park to when you're voting in Honduras. They're in these schools out up in the middle of the mountains in the middle of nowhere and stuff. So the National Party was using these little cars to get their people in and out. But the thing that was really crazy at one point is that the CNE website was down, right? And it was down the night before. And then we heard they were moving locations so people couldn't find their voting center. So we go to this one particular location. I think it was the third location. And me and Johnny,
Lucia.
Yeah, what's that? Yeah,
I think it was Santa Lucia. It was called.
Yeah, that was the one that was crazy, right? And we noticed that in the National Party tent, they have a computer. I'm like, they got a computer out here. So Johnny asked the guy in Spanish, "Could we come around and look?" And we're filming. And Johnny, I'm like, "Hand me the camera, Johnny. You get close." And we go around, and they're accessing like a special software that's going into the back house of the CNE, website, and they're being able to direct their people to where to go to vote. Meanwhile, everybody else, the Liberal Party, the Libre Party, the two other parties, they're flying in the dark because the CNE website was down. They were moving locations. They couldn't tell people where to go to vote. It was like a death by 1,000 cuts. It didn't work, but they swung the bat at it. And that was one of the areas where it just blew my mind. I'm like, they got a back door to the CNE website, which is the main election body over there in Honduras. I'm like, this is just crazy.
Yeah, honestly, I think that the United States is kind of forced to recognize these results this time around, just because in the past it's been so blatant, the fraud, that it would just be impossible to get away with backing them at this point. They're so unpopular in the country. And people in Honduras have been saying for a long time that eventually push is going to come to shove and the government's going to fall. And it did. I'm honestly a little bit surprised to see it fall by electoral means. I wasn't so sure it was gonna go down like that. I'm glad it did, because things would get messy otherwise. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, sources told us that if the Libre Party had not won, they were ready to go to the next level, which is revolution in the streets, and they were prepared for that. They were not expecting necessarily that they would win so widely the way they won, because of the fear of every single time they've tried, 12 years of struggle. And they said they had everything ready in case this didn't happen. And a lot of people, like I was talking to an Uber driver and he was like, yeah, if the Labour Party hadn't won, there'd be things in the streets. So I think a lot of people were like, let's get rid of this government. And then we can argue about whatever our political differences. Again, like the most important thing to note about this election, it was not a political election. It was in its alliance to get rid of a dictatorship. And that's, now we're going to see where everything falls, because a lot of the people that Xiomara's campaign worked with are far to the right. Like they're liberals, and then they're more conservative. So they're, and that's what's going to happen. I mean, they did win some seats in Congress as well, which also shows the unpopularity of the National Party. But how long is that going to last? Where are those alliances going to go? That remains to be seen. But I think, that was the first step. Now you can actually fight to have a democratic exchange, because before there was no democratic exchange in a totalitarian regime. And so I think that's why they won so resoundingly.
Yeah, and just to be clear, the potential for revolution had they lost is not because Libre is like some, power hungry communists. It's that
Oh.
if they lost, it would have definitely been because of fraud. I mean, if you go back to 2017, Xiomara was the running mate to the Liberal Party, because I mean she was doing well on her own, but her and the Liberal Party leader Salvador Nasrallah, funnily enough, I think we've talked about him actually with Ben Norton. She and him were. She recognized that she needed to build alliances, so she wasn't like, I'm going to be the president or nothing. She said, I'm going to be his running mate, because that's how we can get this government out of here. It wasn't that Libre was going to win at all costs by any means necessary.
Well, something that concerns me, like I'm all for building coalitions, but I had done a lot of research on like the 2011 protests in Egypt and the subsequent new government. And I think it's like, you can have like a sort of initial uniting against a political leader, and that's often how protest happens, right? Like you have a bunch of shared grievances. There were like feminists and like conservative Islamists in the same protests, but then the problem is once that government is toppled, then whoever has the most power and material resources is going to be the one that takes power. So of course what happened in somewhere like Egypt is you end up with a very conservative and like neoliberal government, right? And so like do you find that like building this kind of coalition comes with that sort of risk, or do you think that the fact that like Xiomara like won is enough for that risk to not be there as much?
Well, I think they needed to build this alliance to actually win, because the whole point is like they didn't have any sort of means to have a democracy. I also think they need to be smart, and I agree with you. That is a concern of mine, because they're not going to have a lot of things in common now, right? Like now that one thing they had in common to get rid of that current government is gone. So now, like, you're going to see the fallout of that, like how, that it's not going to last. I mean, if Xiomara is serious about democratic socialism, which I think they actually are, that they're going to butt heads. And I think the thing is, people are going to give her a chance. She's pretty popular. And people want to see in Honduras that is peaceful, because they constantly talked about peace, that brings people some sort of like help because they need it, and that will just put Honduras back on the map in terms of economic participation. And so as long as that happens, I think they'll be on their way, but they do have to be astute as to how they're gonna like have relationships, because you're right, there are like a lot of the conservative or more liberal leaning people are going to want to work on behalf of big business, and that's where I think the sort of situation is going to happen in terms of how much is put out on the people. And I don't think it would be smart for the Libre Party to go back on the things they promised, because people are really quick to turn on like when you don't deliver, right? And so I think the people of Honduras though do hold their government accountable, and if like they will like make their disdain like loud if that's the case. I think it's extremely important though to really like I told them as much, to really have eyes not just on the United States and the West, but also on everybody else that you're building alliances with, because believe it or not, like they'll turn on you immediately. That happens all the time in Latin America.
I think that they understand, the Libre government understands where they can step hard and where they can overstep. I mean, Manuel Zelaya, like we talked about, he wasn't a full-blown socialist. He was a capitalist with socialist ideologies. But his biggest fault was what? Alba, right? Was he in Alba for 2 weeks before they removed his ass? You know, the alliance with all those other countries, and they're like, oh, no, what's going on? So, you know, unlike, when it came to Egypt, you know, Sisi had the full backing of the West in the United States. You know, the United States was like, whatever you need, Sisi, as long as we can still sell you weapons, you do what you got to do. With the Libre Party now, it's a situation of, okay, what can we do without the West coming down on us and causing too much tension and not removing us in the middle of the night? And what do we promise our people that they won't overturn us with as well? I have a sense too, Alex and Mila, that moving forward, you're going to see these young warriors of the Libre Party come forward. You know what I'm saying? That they're going to get an opportunity.
Oh, and they're good. They good.
Are. I honored them at the last meal I had. I toasted to them. There were so many great things about that trip. Being able to meet Manuel Zelaya, watching the counting process, seeing the individuals vote from the Libre Party was so amazing. Like when you go with them, the pride they have. You know, they're not taking this moment for granted like Americans do. But the best thing was seeing these young warriors of the Libre Party operate behind closed doors, learn everything about the election system because they understood the election was the battle. They had to win this battle for anything that.
Yeah, it's certainly unfortunate today. I think Pasta was right about the CIA hitting us when it matters the most. Build up that energy again. We need you to build up that energy again. You were on a roll.
Well, I don't know where I got cut off, but like I'm saying, the best thing was, and I was able to toast to them and honor them behind closed doors. I said they're about to honor and praise Xiomara for winning, but they won because of you. They understand this is a war, and this was the most important battle, winning this election, and they did. And I look forward.
Very unlucky.
He looks forward to the success of the people of Honduras.
We look forward to the baleadas.
We're going to be back, actually. We're supposed to go back, actually, for the inauguration.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wonderful. So I look forward to your coverage.
Yeah.
I think, I think this is a situation like Bolivia where we're going to see a lot of the U.S. left pay particular interest ostensibly favorably to Libre, right? Where a lot of the U.S. left is going to be like, oh, yeah, those are our social democratic buddies. But it's going to be really important for them to temper their expectations because not only is this the result of a coalition, but there's a massive amount of debt that they're inheriting. A lot of it owed to the International Monetary Fund. So it's going to be really difficult. It's going to be a very uphill battle for the Libre Party to make meaningful reforms. And reforms that it's gonna. I don't think anything's gonna happen overnight, right? It's kind of a similar situation to here in Mexico, where you have just so many decades of neoliberal rule that Morena, the party of López Obrador, they're not able to move quite fast enough for people's expectations. And the left here is expecting, I think, more than it's hard to undo neoliberalism, right? First of all, you got all that debt. How do you? It's easier to privatize a national industry than it is to nationalize a private industry, and I don't think people realize that. So it's going to be really important to temper our expectations and have patience and support. For Libre. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Jacobin crowd and the Nation crowd and the Intercept crowd who allied with Libre in the past because that was the cool thing to do, in 1 or 2 years start putting out hit pieces. I would not be surprised at all. So
that long, 1 or 2 years? Still, I'm looking at my
maybe
clock.
6 months.
Maybe tomorrow, actually.
Well, this has been an issue too, because Xiomara said that she wanted to decriminalize abortion, right? And then she had to walk that back because of all the pressure from members of her alliance. So I'm half expecting hit pieces over that. Failed promise to decriminalize abortion. creeping right-wing chauvinism and the social in Honduras, the Social Democratic Party. I can see those hit pieces coming. So I urge our followers to keep an eye on you guys, because you're fair and you understand the context of operating that they're operating in, with the boot of empire over their necks at every moment. You move too fast and you get cooed overnight. So you said you're going in January?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, we're gonna be in Nicaragua for their inauguration, and then Honduras. So we're excited to see what is happening, and I believe the revolution is strong in Latin America. I think that's where we're gonna see what we are seeing right now, the most movement building and coalition building, and just actual sort of revolutionary attempts to fight back against the empire. And I think it's something to observe, learn from, and to really just continue to watch, because I believe it's amazing. I mean, everything that's happening now. And yes, I think it depends on the country situation. And culturally, Latin America is extremely conservative socially. And that's some of the things that people on the Western left need to understand, that, economic development comes first for a lot of people. Right. So you're gonna get, in order, if you want people to get to those social developments, you shouldn't be like the one American that's trying to dictate, telling someone how to think and how to run their country, because they really don't like that about us. They hate that. So
they've had enough of that. I mean.
Well, it's something I've observed as well, especially now because I've been seeing like this Roe v. Wade discourse come back in the US. And I think that people don't understand that the biggest issue when it comes to abortion is economic. It's not about men wanting to stop women from getting abortions or whatever, especially in like these socially conservative countries. A lot of the women themselves are pro-life as well. And so, the priority should be economic development, because that's how you prevent unwanted pregnancies to begin with. And like, it just seems so absurd and chauvinistic to me to see people like fixating on that and fixating on, especially in Nicaragua or whatever. It's just, it's absurd.
Yeah, I mean, and our expectations are so high in the US. I mean, I sent you this tweet, Mila, yesterday.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Where it was shoe on head. I don't know who that person is. I hear people talk about that person, but I don't know who they are. But they tweeted it.
Yeah.
And it was a screenshots of quote tweets to Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders was saying, did you see this, Fee? Yeah. So, I mean, Bernie Sanders, just for our audience, Bernie was saying, it's basically, he was saying it's a woman's right to choose. And then all these people were calling him a transphobe because it's not just women who give birth. So our expectations are so fucking high. I don't understand how a U.S. left that thinks in that way can ever support the building of socialism in Latin America. I don't think it's
that's liberalism.
I'm not sure how they can accomplish anything at home either. That's the thing. Like, it's not even just about like their outlooks on other countries. It's like, you're not going to achieve anything at all with that. Like, you're appealing to maybe 1% of the population with that kind of rhetoric.
You're actually alienating people from the left, though. Those people alienate people from the left, because then what conservatives do is they classify all of us as that. That is what people think of now as the left, like the woke culture left. And it's like, woke was supposed to be a good thing. Like being aware of things is supposed to be a good thing, but it's turned to is into this whole thing where, you're so hyper focused on this social culture and like all of these symbolic gestures, and that you lose sight of really what gets to inclusivity and intersectionality is economics. And it's not class reductionist to say that. We're not saying that racism white supremacy isn't an issue. We're saying that in order to combat that the most, you need to educate people. You need to get rid of ignorance. You need to go and really give people the economics, because if you're a human being, as a natural human being, we can talk about Maslow's theory of hierarchy, where you need your biological needs met first. You need food, water, shelter. Like, if you don't have those things, you're not going to look at everything else. So you need to have those things first, which is why you see that development in Latin America, because a lot of these people lack those resources or that we take for granted. And so when you're coming in as somebody that's, and I'm not even a huge fan of Bernie Sanders anymore at all, but the dude is tweeting about abortion rights, and you are now maligning somebody and you're calling him a transphobe, which is what they do. If you have some sort of opinion that is deemed different from the status quo that they have created within this realm of, like, I think it's liberalism. It's just social liberalism, but then you are outcasted too, and you are also this or that, and you are now canceled. And it's not saying that people who do bad things shouldn't have consequences, but it is saying, like, it's just gone to a level where it's extreme and nothing gets done, and you're just stuck in this endless cycle of dealing with this. And I think we just have to put those people away, push them aside, and like just do the work, because they're there to distract. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, these people need to be ignored.
Well, they're treating politics as like their own vanity project, right? Like, it's just like, it's about feeling good and right. It's not about like the materially improving conditions. Like, and we just have to be upfront about that. And like, I mean, that's why I've kind of given up on being like, oh, well, that's not the real left or whatever. Like, it is. It's just like, you know what? Like, I'm just not going to, like, I'd rather just be like, fine, then I'm not like a leftist if that's what this is, But
it comes to a point when you have to like disavow everything, that you're just like, you know what? I accept it. You guys do your thing. I'm going to go do my own thing.
Yeah. But it's just like, I get also like the utility of the term, because like globally, like, I think, it does mean something different in different countries. And so,
So before we get going, can you talk to us about Peru? What's been going on there over the past year? Quick rundown. What were you doing there this past month?
Yeah, so we really just went there because we were gonna we were just gonna kind of rest and have like a stable studio space, because I have a family there, and so we were able to do that. And learning about the politics and talking to people.
You're Latinx? Sorry.
Oh my God. Nobody uses that term who's Latino, like, ever. Just, I've had a rant about that. I'm not going to talk about that now. But yeah, no, stop.
We've all had a rant about that.
No, I'm Latina. Okay. All right. So, Pedro Castillo, everybody when he won was like really excited, beating the neoliberal fascist, Keiko Fujimori, who has been her dad was awful. We all knew he committed human rights abuses, and she is so like, she is like a literal neo-fascist, and that's unfortunately what a lot of the Congress in Peru is. And so they have all this power, and that's part of the huge problem that Peru has, is they have all this power. Also in Lima, which is the most populated city, it's the largest city, and it's where there's a lot of money and private business. They are resoundingly anti-communist. And so even Pedro Castillo winning was like, oh my God, he's a communist, he's this. So he chose to kind of say, no, I'm not a communist. Peru's not Venezuela. We're not going to do that. So he kind of sort of, was trying to walk a very fine line, kind of like the people of Honduras are doing, kind of trying to, not sound so left. And he wasn't really that left. He actually was recruited by the Peru Libre Party, which was to his left. And he was a strike organizer, he was a teacher. But what he lacks is a stronger character and leadership. And a lot of people in Peru really were looking for that. And he, to them, is not, meeting expectations. And you hit it on the nose when you said, we have to like get our expectations in, like reduce them, because he's alone. the Libre Peru Libre doesn't really have a huge standing in Congress, and so they already got rid of several of the people in his government. Vladimir Cerrón was the main guy, the foreign minister, and Vladimir Cerrón was the guy that pretty much was recruiting him and who was talking a lot. And they've even been at it on Twitter. He said a really shitty thing about Nicaragua's election, saying that it didn't seem like they were fair. Pedro Castillo did. And so he's trying to kind of please both sides, and it's not working for him. So what they're trying to do now is get rid of him. They're trying to get rid of him, saying he's a communist and he has ties to terrorist groups like the Shining Path, still regurgitating that same story. It's entirely false, but they're also going to attempt to get rid of his vice president. And then who's left? Well, the president of Congress. And the president of Congress is the leader of the popular La Fuerza Popular, which is the neoliberal right-wing government of Peru. And that's pretty much what is in line to happen, which is why we're going to go back there and report on that, because it's likely to happen very soon. And so it's really unfortunate, but if you don't have a solid...
Oh no. This episode is cursed.
They're just picking them off one by one.
I know.
God damn it. But just to finish up, I'm just going to say the only thing rising up in the rural areas, because there's a stark difference between the people in rural areas and the people in Lima. The people in rural areas were the people that elected Pedro Castillo. So, yeah.
All right. So I think we'll wrap up now because we've had enough misfortune already.
Yeah.
Dee, thank you so much for joining us. What's your Twitter handle? Tell us your Twitter handle.
Fiorella, Fiorella_IM. And yeah, I'm back on Twitter. They said it was a mistake, that I was caught in a spam situation, that they thought I was a spam. Okay, but whatever. So yeah, that's my
You
Twitter.
are a troll,
I'm
though.
on the combo couch. I'm such a troll. You can find me on YouTube, Rockfin, which is great, because they don't censor. And yeah, we're gonna be traveling again next year. I can't believe it's almost 2022. Weird. And yeah, so just check us out. Pasta is YoPasta on Twitter. And yeah, thanks so much for having me on, you guys. I love this conversation.
I just want to say one more time, I'm so thankful that we have independent media like you guys that are traveling and taking a critical look at the empire abroad, right? Because the legacy independent media, Jacobin, The Nation, Intercept, these kind of people, they fucking suck. And they're just I'm sorry. They don't have their fingers on the pulse, and I'm so happy. No, I just, I've been following you guys for a little while now, and I'm so happy that you're traveling and doing this kind of stuff. It's so badly needed. So thank you so much. I hope our viewers check you out if they're not already. And it was great to have you guys on.
Yeah, definitely. I really enjoyed the Convo Couch, and I first discovered it through, like, very recently, actually, through Jimmy Dore. And it was just very, very refreshing, very refreshing stuff, and gives me some faith in in some U.S. media.
When are we gonna send Jimmy to Central America? I would pay to see that.
I don't know. We got to get Jimmy to Central America. We'll let him know he needs to go. That's it. But he did cover Nicaragua, so that was cool. I mean, he had us on to talk about it, and he has a huge platform, so people were really thankful for that. So thank you both once again for having me on, and I appreciate the work you're doing as well.
Thanks, Fee.